can't miss. Diamonds on my neck and on my wrist.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Blazers Edge podcast. I am your host, Danny Marang. And first of all, I just want to extend a thank you, a token of gratitude for everybody who's been riding with the podcast for years. To be honest, things are just really looking up. And that's in no small part to everybody who listens, who downloads, who subscribes, who goes back and forth beyond Twitter and the comments. I really appreciate you guys. This has been really fun, and by no means am I going anywhere. It's just something I wanted to kind of reflect on. Just this kind of journey, because I'm taking some new steps here. I'm doing some more new stuff, and it's fun to kind of look back and see how far this stuff has come. Like a personal note, some of you have been following the house hunting adventures on Twitter, and well, looks like we've got a place. So accompanied with a fun Blazers game. This has been a good weekend. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to touch on, obviously we're recording just after the the Blazers squeaked one out against the Knicks. Tale of two halves. I don't typically like to break down quarter by quarter type stuff, but we're going to touch on that a little bit, just as kind of touching points going forward. Bit of housekeeping. I'm going to try to keep the pods Sunday nights as usual. I'm going to try to insert some stuff in between. I've got some guests booked. I've got some younger, newer Blazers Edge contributors I've got lined up for the podcast we're going to bring on and introduce you guys to. Keep the questions coming. Keep all that stuff coming. And again, thank you for the support. I just want to say I really appreciate it. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. It helps out. It does. It's been tremendous over the last couple of years. And I really appreciate it. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got that in there. Onto the housekeeping Blazers stuff. We talked a little bit about CJ's injury. I'm just going to touch on it real quickly here. When it first happened, I expected it to be a couple weeks. The announcement came out, and I kind of put a little 15-second, 20-second clip on the front of the podcast because the announcement came out literally as I clicked publish, or was going to click publish, I should say. Publish, I should say, on the podcast. That midnight news drop. Shout out the Blazers and their crack media dump team. But I expected it to be a couple weeks anyways. I mean, you don't roll your ankle that way and not have it just be a week. So I expect him back after the All-Star break, probably a couple weeks after. I'm less confident in them and on CJ being back after 6 weeks than probably most people, just because those kind of injuries tend to linger, and the fact that he's going to be in a boot for a month makes me hesitant. Being out of basketball for a month and then getting back in basketball shape, it's kind of hard to do when you can't do those things. So I would lean probably towards the 6 to 8 weeks more than I would the 4 to 6, but that's just me. I overestimate this stuff just because that's typically how it goes. But you hope he gets healthy because he was legitimately having an all-star campaign. And yes, I'm dead serious. If he had performed or continued to perform at his level, 27, 5, and 3, he would have been an all-star. You don't have Harden in the Western Conference anymore. Chris Paul wasn't making the all-star team with his production. Jamal Murray has not been that dude. CJ would have been probably the last guy in, legitimately. He was that good. So it's a real kick in the pants to see that happen. But, that's the basketball gods, right? Especially with Portland. And as it pertains to Nurk, again, I would lean longer. Instead of 6 to 8, I'd go 8 to 10. I would expect Nurk back towards the very end of the season. And then Collins still, I still don't think he gets ready for the season. But enough of the depressing stuff. Let's talk about basketball, because the Blazers got 5 whole freaking days off. And as Terry Stotts is one to do, he did some things. When they have time off to prepare, they usually do some things. And this is where I'm trying to think of the right word for this. I think Stotts is a above-average coach, and I think he can be even better. I think he handcuffs himself sometimes, but when you give him time outside of the playoffs, he can come up with some pretty creative stuff. And what they did, knowing that they don't really have a rim protector, but shout out Enes Kanter. He's gotten more blocks in the past 5 games than he has in any 5-game stretch in his entire career, which cool. Had a handful of them again tonight against the Knicks, mostly because Julius Randle doesn't know what a pump fake is. But I digress. Let's kind of hit on a couple of things that the Blazers rolled out. First of all, a primarily zone defense, and then putting Derrick Jones Jr. at the tip of that spear. I'm going to roll this back. It shouldn't be shocking that the Blazers defense that didn't have C.J. McCollum in it got bigger, got longer, and we're about the same level of athleticism, maybe half a step slower in Rodney Hood, and featured Derrick Jones Jr. at the point of the attack in a 2-3. Is it weird that looked better? Because it shouldn't be, because you got longer. That matters in the NBA. Them rolling that out, forcing the Knicks into long twos, and shout out Quickly and Alec Burks for canning shots tonight. There was a couple there, particularly in the second half, where guys weren't where they were supposed to be, guys weren't closing out. There was a little bit of miscommunication. But in the first half, let's go ahead and give praise where it's due. They were really effective. Especially the bench unit came in and held serve and actually grew the lead. And again, a lot of that was, I think, Terry Stotts putting Derrick Jones Jr. at the point of attack, putting Robert Covington in one corner, putting Anfernee Simons in another. Say what you want about guys like Ant, who have been a deficit defensively, but he's still 6'4", 6'5", with crazy long arms. Like, they can get out in passing lanes, they can get deflections, and they can cause some havoc, which is what Portland did. You put Derrick Jones Jr. up top, and you get some deflections, you get out and you go do some things. And they capitalize. This is going to be a carrying theme for the Portland Trail Blazers while Nurk and CJ are down. How effective can they be? Not necessarily defensively and getting stops, but turning teams over, getting them out of things that they want to do. How much can they dictate? And then, I think more importantly, how well can they dictate pace? The starting unit played a little bit faster than I expected, but still slower than I wanted them to play against the Knicks. The Knicks grind possessions into dust. They almost 25% of their possessions end with 7 seconds or less on the shot clock. This isn't the 7 seconds or less shot. This is the 7 seconds or left on the shot clock. Very divergent schemes from the 7 seconds or less Suns. But that's tips. Limit mistakes, eat up clock, limit possessions, and you give yourself an opportunity, as we saw in that game. So, but that bench unit that came in, you saw Nasir Little, Gary Trent Jr., and Harry Giles all come off the bench in the first half together. And you saw Portland get really athletic. The only guy that was out there with that bench unit, and Melo, who, I mean, they had enough athleticism to kind of cover up for him, and he didn't look as nearly as bad as he has in the past, which, shocking. You don't have him out there with Hood and Cantor at the same time when, trying to cover up for guys up front, and that's just not going to work. But again, back to the things that they were trying to work on, and they clearly showed. Derrick Jones Jr., let's highlight him a little bit here. It's no secret, I like his energy. His athleticism is world-class. I thought he was being poorly used in the offense, sticking him in the corner too often, and then when he was running actions, they were not finding him. Somebody drove home the point during practice to find Derrick Jones Jr. with the damn ball. There was a concerted effort to get DJ the ball on the short roll, and he delivered. He finished through contact a couple different times, got to the free throw line, knocked down a three. They looked to lob to him multiple times. They were not great at it, but again, they're trying. I'll take that. If that's what it takes to get him involved, great, grand, awesome. I don't care. Get him the ball. It's 3 points. He was incredibly efficient. If it comes at the expense of getting Enes Kanter a few less touches, I'm okay with that, because Kanter is still going to find touches and get you probably 10-ish points just on putbacks alone. Like, he feasts down there. It's crazy. It's just stupid how good he is on the offensive glass, or, just constantly being there on short rolls. Like, just being that dude. That guy has his hands up all the time. I mean, he had one tonight where he was probably in the paint for more than 3 seconds. There was a scramble play when Covington found Kanter from the floor after Jones Jr. lost the handle in transition. But Cantor's just sitting there, hands up, hands up, hands up. That's what he does. Derrick Jones Jr., not necessarily that guy, and really he can't stand under the rim and just wait for passes. He's just not big enough to elevate in a crowd. But you catch him in on the roll in some space, and guess what? He gets up in the air and finishes. So really, really, really liked what I saw with particularly Dame and Jones Jr. in the pick and roll, getting him going downhill. And really, if you're going to have him on the floor as your roll man and you're going to run some of these small ball lineups, instead of, sticking Derrick Jones Jr. in the corner, sticking Rodney Hood in the corner, that's a good thing. Hood's a great corner three-point shooter. Look to exploit that, and they did. The spacing looked really good with that unit. I was really enjoying what I saw. The bench unit came in, and I know everybody's just wringing their hands over Anfernee Simons. They need a backup point guard. They didn't. Shut up. No, they don't. I'm getting so tired of hearing how 5 minutes of Tim Frazier is going to save this team. They're going to live and die by, the three. So get a guy out there who can shoot, because it doesn't matter who's getting the ball to Carmelo Anthony on the block. Like that's going to be a featured part of this offense, because that's where some of that creation is going to go to. You don't have a bunch of off-ball movers. Like, I understand the concept. I know why people think that getting somebody off the street would make sense and getting the ball moving. You've got too many ball stoppers in the second unit. Gary Trent Jr. is a ball stopper. Carmelo Anthony is a ball stopper. Rodney Hood, when he's with that unit, is a ball stopper. Anfernee, to an extent, is a ball stopper. These guys are play enders. They have a ton of play enders. They do not have additional creators. And putting a guy out there like a Tim Frazier, who's not really a shooter, they're just going to sag off of him. Like, that's what they're going to do. He's not a guy who gets to the rim and draws the defense, which is something Ant struggles with as well. But there's an opportunity there for shot creation, and that alone opens up the defense. And a guy is not going to come off the street and fix that. It's just not. If they're going to use a roster spot on somebody, use it on a big, because foul trouble, injuries, whatever it is, that's where they need it. Break glass in case of emergency, big. The guards spot, they're going to be what they are. Nobody coming off the street is going to fix that problem. I think that's where we're at. I know some people are probably still going to tell them, shut up, you shut up. Yeah, listen, I get it. I'm to the point where it doesn't make any sense to argue about it anymore. It is what it is, and you're not getting anything from that, from 5 minutes out of the guy. You're not. You're just not. You got to take a step back and look at that and go, nah, that's not the way we're going to do this. It's not the way we can do this, and it's not going to make any difference. So you ride with the guys you got. And so, speaking of, and this is where you got to give Stott some credit, they have gone to a little bit more off-ball action. They went into some horn set, which, if you're going to have Carmelo Anthony in there, have him be that high-post creator. Run some pin downs for Gary Trent Jr., for Rodney Hood. If Derrick Jones Jr. is out there, have him work as the pin down guy, as a screener, and then give him some action going towards the rim. Basically put guys in motion around Carmelo Anthony. Ant's first three tonight came off of a horns action, and I believe it was Hood. I'm trying to remember exactly. Was on the right. Gary was popping on the left, both double pin downs. And Ant gave it up to Hood. Hood didn't get the look. I think he bobbled the pass a little bit, but was able to reset and get it back to Ant. But because the offense was in motion and you had some gravity coming off of those shooters, there were opportunities for other guys to step into shots, and Ant confidently stepped into it. Do I expect Ant to go nuts like this, nuts, air quotes, to perform the way he did tonight regularly? No, not yet. He's got a ways to go to develop the consistency, but this is why I'm high on him. He can get red hot in a quarter, and he can get you 20 in a quarter, legitimately. Like, that's what his ceiling is that he is a guy who can just shoot lights out. He is a confidence player if he can get his confidence right. And it's a big stretch. It is. Realistically, it is. It is. Most guys can't ever figure it out. I'm high on him because I think he can. I legitimately think he can. How he takes this time with CJ out, and if he can hook into it, if he can develop, and I'm not even talking about his full potential, but show real growth, build up the confidence in himself, it will be a boon for this team going forward. There is no doubt about that. You know what Gary Trent Jr. I think is at this point. I think he's a 15 to maybe 18 point a game starter if he actualizes everything, which is a hell of a player. I think Ant can be a 20 point a game guy if he puts it all together. And that's not an easy threshold to cover. I think the second hardest jump in the NBA once you're a true rotation player, a guy who can score, is going from 15 to 18 to the 20s, and then I think from the 20s to the 25. I think those are the two toughest jumps in the league once you're an established player. And I think Ant can legitimately get to that 20-point per game plateau. And I'm sure some people think I'm crazy, but he's got elite shot creation, shot taking, shot making tools. He legitimately does. And if you don't believe that, that's fine. But there's other people in that organization that are out there on the floor night in, night out that believe the same thing. They talk about him glowingly because they think he's got it. You don't sit here and gas a guy up and talk about him giving you work and practice if he doesn't have the goods, because otherwise you look like an idiot. Like you're getting handled in practice by a guy who's not that good. Think about that for a split second. It just doesn't make any sense. But I liked what I saw from him tonight. And to take a step back and take a look at the CJ/Nurk replacement players. You got to get more from Ant. Check. You got to get more consistency from Gary Trent Jr. Check-ish tonight. I did not like the fact that he still lagged behind Carmelo Anthony in shot attempts and minutes. I know Ant played more, so that maybe cut into Gary's time. I would still rather see Gary get some minutes at the 3 if that's what really needs to happen to get him more minutes. I mean, again, 26 should be the number. But timely three-point shooting night didn't really impact the box score otherwise, but solid game. We'll give him C+, B-, right? Derrick Jones Jr., fantastic night tonight. Was involved everywhere. Got out in transition, knocked down a 3. Defensively active at the point of attack, disruptive, just doing all the things Derrick does. Had a couple rebounds that were just out of nowhere. This team needs help rebounding. They are getting murdered on the glass in these Melo at the quasi-5. I know Covington's listed as the 5, but they're parking Melo under the rim, folks. It's Melo at the 5. But they're getting killed on the glass on both sides. They're one of the worst teams in the league with Melo and underneath, both securing defensive rebounds and giving up offensive rebounds. The Melo at the quasi-5 position, they're dead last. They're giving up almost 31%. Their offensive rebound rate given up is almost 31%. Yeesh. They've got to figure something out. And that leads me to my next point. Harry Giles III. I almost called him Harry Giles Jr. because they've got so many juniors on this damn team. Harry Giles came in on a crazy night, 5 points, 8 boards, and a block, but the 8 rebounds. Came in and acquitted himself well enough to be like, okay, that's good, solid. Had a couple contested rebounds, which is good to see because he's not the biggest, strongest guy. And the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson, I mean, really bouncy. Julius Randle is a truck. Getting in and mixing up against those guys, good. That bodes well. So if you take this collective, Gary Trent Jr., Anfernee Simons, Harry Giles, Derrick Jones Jr. to an extent, guys that can come together and give you some of the Nurk CJ box score production, the scoring, rebounding, playmaking, just goodness. Together, they did a pretty good job. I think you would say this is probably a B+ kind of night from those guys. Maybe you wanted a little bit more from Gary. Maybe you wanted a little bit more production across the box scores for some other guys. But overall, if you want to be a real tight curve, you can go B. But I think B+. If they can get these kind of nights, more often than not, this is going to be enough. Where the variance is going to occur, and that's going to kind of lead me to the next point here. They're going to live and die by the 3. That is unequivocally clear at this point. Their ability to consistently defend, especially if they're going to run Carmelo in closing units, especially if they're going to run Cantor in closing units, that's to be bigger and maybe try to secure a few more rebounds. They're going to be volatile as far as being able to stay in front of guys. Cantor acquitted himself really well down the stretch, had a couple big blocks on Julius Randle. Melo got smoked on the perimeter. It was 2 out of 3 possessions, and they basically just walked to the rim. But Cantor was there to bail him out a couple times. But I don't think you can count on that, really, regularly. So how that closing lineup is adjusted, and Stotts gave Ant some burn late, which I think he deserved tonight. I would have probably liked to see Gary out there a little bit more. We saw Jones Jr. Out there consistently, which I want to see Derrick out there because right now he is their best defender, the most versatile defender too, especially in man situations. Quickly was just cooking. I would have liked to see Derrick attack him a little bit more. But again, I'm nitpicking some stuff. But here's the grand scheme things, right? Portland is going to live and die by the three. They're going to need that group of guys to give them real box score production and not just like off box score hustle plays. Like they need to give them the things that they were already and then some to make up nearly 35, 40 points a game. God, that's a lot. Heroic efforts by Damian Lillard. I would not be surprised if Dame averaged over 30 with CJ out. It honestly, they probably has to get there. And he was masterful tonight, 39 on 17. Just torrential downpour in the first half. And he did this in under 36 minutes, which that's a victory in and of itself. If they can get crazy good production in these spurts, which I would expect Dame to be as aggressive as he was in the first quarter, kind of during this period, like set the tone, cook early and often, and then maybe you don't have to work quite as hard on the back end. And again, living and dying by the three. That is their great equalizer right now because they're going to get beat on the boards. There will be nights where that second unit isn't nearly as effective or somebody isn't kind of carrying their burden, so to speak. But yeah, that's going to be what this is. And then pace. I really want to see this team play fast because they can't grind out possessions. Not consistently. Now, they maybe get some here or there. But they can put pressure on teams, especially the young Bucks, especially Ant, Gary, Harry. Nas got out there for a few minutes tonight. Still looks like he's a little bit out of control. Just you can tell he's just amped. Like I love the energy. I do. They gotta just kind of rein him in a little bit. And I think with some time, I think that'll be good. Especially getting out there in the first half. This is good for him to kind of work his way back in. They can get a few energy plays out of him. Great. Awesome. And then as he kind of gets back into the swing of things, maybe we can get a little bit more out of him. But there's going to be some inconsistencies. And you just kind of have to live with them. I'm probably the biggest stickler when it comes to this team. That's probably not shocking to anybody. I nitpick wins. I'm not nitpicking wins with CJ and Nurk out. I mean, I will. Let's be honest. But I will. But I'm not seriously nitpicking wins. I'll nitpick it because that's what I do. I look at things that I'm never satisfied. I want to see improvement and adjustments, but realistically, I'm not going to really like. Melo went 3 of 14 tonight, and I've barely talked about him. It is what it is. You knew he was going to do that tonight. You knew he was going to jack up shots against the Knicks. But here's the thing: of those 14 shots, 10 were threes, and only one of them, and you all know which one I'm talking about. That was an egregious, greedy, ridiculous shot. Let's be honest. But I have said it, and I will remain to say it. Carmelo Anthony stepping into open threes are good shots. Full stop. So, outside of the one ridiculous heat check when he wasn't hot. Is that a cold check? I don't know. Whatever. But they're going to live and die by the three. They need to play faster. That adds some more volatility, but it also gives them opportunity. Their variance on the glass is going to be pretty strong, especially if they keep taking a lot of threes. On some nights, they may be able to get some of those long rebounds. Some nights, they may get murdered and they may get killed in transition. Those are the nights you really want to see them wave a white flag and just kind of get away from it. But all in all, first game back after 5 days off, I liked what I saw. Ant stepped forward. Gary shows some solid consistency. Derrick Jones Jr. is a bigger part of the offense. Saw some defensive tweaks. You saw some more structure to the second unit. Like, there's a lot of good things tonight. The fourth quarter notwithstanding, the lack of an established playmaker, ball handler, trustworthy second guy when the Knicks trapped was problematic. I wonder how much of that's going to get on film and teams really take that to heart. I would expect in close games, this is only the third real close game the Blazers have had this season. They've either won handily or gotten just rolled out of the gym. They've only lost one game by less than 15 points. So when they've lost, they've gotten just handled. But that is what it is. I'm going to wrap it up here. Like I said, I'm going to try and keep these ones at least under a half hour when it's just me. Number one, I'm very tired and it's midnight. Number two, nobody wants to hear me talk by myself for this long. I've got some guests coming up. I've got some really cool guests coming up. I'll make some announcements once they are officially booked and scheduled. We're still working on some scheduling stuff, but they are in. But I think that's it for tonight. We'll probably come back again here on Wednesday of the midweek episode with new Blazers Edge contributor Corey Randall. Looking forward to that. And again, thanks, guys. I know I called some of you stupid for wanting to sign a backup point guard, but I still love you. I still want you to listen. I still am grateful that you're a part of this community because then I get to argue with people. But in all seriousness, again, thank you. And please like, rate, review, subscribe, do all those things. Even with CJ and Nurk down, there's still plenty to talk about and enjoy and have fun with. That's what we're here to do. So, again, thank you very much. I'll catch you guys next time. And until then, bye.
I can't miss. Diamonds on my neck and on my wrist. Now they tryna get me out of mix. That's why me and bro